God has presented his salvation by way of his son Jesus. And it ain't my fault that they rejected him. It ain't my fault they choose the world. It ain't my fault they choose wickedness. It ain't my fault they worship Satan. It ain't my fault they worship mankind. It ain't my fault they worship their graven images. It ain't my fault they worship their TVs. It ain't my fault they worship their computers. It ain't my fault they worship their pornography. It ain't my fault they worship their liquor and beer. It ain't my fault they worship their prostitutes. It ain't my fault they worship their wicked government. It ain't my fault they think that somehow or another when they put another president in it's going to save the nation. It ain't my fault that they listen to the Fox News, CNN, NBC, ABC, and all the rest of the stupid idiots. It ain't my fault, because God has given a chance to every man and every woman and every child of age of accountability to come to him, all ye that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He said, I've given you. I've made it simple and plain for you to take upon my salvation. Good afternoon. On this May the 16th, 2012, I want to welcome you to this edition of the ETW News Network, Endtime Watchman News Network. I'm supposed to have a guest coming in here and calling in here in a little bit. I don't see him in the chat room. Remember the other day when I told y'all about this stuff that's going on? It could happen to any one of us. Well, it happened to one of us. Yeah, the violation of privacy. It happened to one of us. So I've done some investigation, and I'm going to wait till I see this person in the chat room before I say where it's at and what's going on. But anyway, let me talk to you for a minute about the rights of students in schools. Of course, y'all know that we homeschool ours. We don't send them there. But there's some cases people don't have any choice, but with what's going on and what's continually going on, if people probably make some different choices here. But anyway, the Fourth Amendment, and like I told you, I don't believe the Constitution matters to any of them anymore, but I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this because people that still have their children in public school, they won't, one would think that the school would go by the law, but that's not the case in a lot of cases. But the Fourth Amendment allows people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Now, see, these restrictions, these amendments apply in public schools. Now, I will go on and say that the court, it gives school officials and police some leeway to conduct searches in schools. Courts balance of students' privacy and their rights against schools' interests and safety and student discipline and things of that nature. This means that students often have less protection against what they might perceive as unreasonable searches and seizures at school and in other places. In most circumstances, though, search by police requires a search warrant. You understand what I'm saying? In most cases. It requires a search warrant. Now, I did some study and investigation, and the thing about it is a search warrant is advance written permission from a judge that the police have reasonable grounds to suspect that a crime is being committed. Okay? Police then must base their search on probable cause. Now let's go with the definition. Probable cause, a reasonable ground to suspect that a person has committed a particular crime or that a place contains specific items connected with that crime under the Fourth Amendment. Probable cause, which amounts to more than a bare suspicion but less than legal proof, must be shown before an arrest warrant or search warrant may even be issued. Okay? Now, that being said, reasonable suspicion is a carefully considered presumption based on specific facts and circumstances that a person is probably involved in criminal activity. Before an officer can act on this level of suspicion, he must have enough knowledge to lead any reasonable cautious person to conclude that a crime is being or about to be committed by that suspect. Okay? At the level of probable cause, an officer may arrest the suspect using reasonable suspicion. The officer may stop and detain the suspect but not arrest them. Okay? Did you hear me? Probable cause, the officer may arrest the suspect. Reasonable suspicion, the officer may stop and detain but not arrest the suspect. Okay? Do you understand me? Courts have said that school officials can search students in public school if there's reasonable suspicion to search. They don't need probable cause. Two types of reasonable suspicion. Individualized suspicion is when a school official has reasonable belief that you personally might be doing something illegal. Now that is speaking to a personal student there, not to you and I. Generalized suspicion. Generalized suspicion is when school officials are concerned that there might be illegal activity somewhere in the school. This means the student drug test or metal detectors are allowed when there's a general concern about students using drugs, carrying weapons. However, there's some courts that have ruled that without any evidence of illegal activity, such searches would be unconstitutional. Schools primarily responsible for keeping students safe and providing with the best possible education free from unnecessary disruption. It allows the school's officials some flexibility to conduct searches of the schools in the school grounds, parking lots to ensure their students are safe. Okay? These searches can be based on information supplied by students, school employees, and the police. Now, your school retains control and access to your lockers. This is speaking about students here, okay? I know none of us are in school. Therefore, school officials can inspect student lockers. Now, therefore, they can inspect the student lockers. Many schools have created a written policy that permits principals and other officials to search a locker and the contents inside it when they have a general concern that they might find evidence of a crime or violation of a school rule. Check to see if your school has a policy on locker searches. Now, school officials. My guest just logged in. School officials may search backpacks if they have reasonable suspicion that you're breaking a law or violating school rule. Now, let me go to something here. We've sort of put a foundation here that they need warrants to bring in the police for drug searches, okay? There was something took place. Back in 04, I believe it was. Goose Creek, South Carolina, the American Civil Liberties Union applauded a landmark settlement reached this week in a lawsuit challenging police tactics in the high-profile drug raid of Stanford High School. Settlement gets new standards for students' constitutional rights from unreasonable searches and seizures. Absent a warrant, police will now need to have probable cause in pressing circumstances, voluntary consent to conduct law enforcement activity on school grounds. You see, police must respect the fundamental freedoms. And, listen to me, an attorney with ACLU Drug Law Enforcement Project said, the settlement properly raises the bar for student rights and should serve as a model for every school in the country. November 5th, 2003, there was a police raid that took place at Stratford High School and was recorded by the school's surveillance cameras and police camera. The tape shows students as young as 14 forced to the ground and handcuffed. SWAT team uniform, bulletproof vest, and all that good stuff was going on. And the ACLU represented 20 of the 150 students caught up in the raid. The raid was initiated by the school's principal, George McCracken, who resigned shortly thereafter. The tape surfaced and hit national television. The raid was authorized based on the principal's suspicion that a single student was dealing marijuana. The raid was carried out despite the suspected student being absent at the time. The student wasn't even there. Okay. The official, the principal, gave the okay, and the student wasn't even at school. Now, while African Americans represented less than a quarter of the high school students, more than two-thirds of those caught up in the sweep were African American. Raid took place early in the morning hours when the school's hallways predominantly populated with students and those buses arriving to school. Now, to make a long story short here, the cost of the settlement is to be paid by Goose Creek Police Department, Berkeley County School District, where the school is located. with assistance from representative insurance companies. It wound up being about $1.6 million they had to pay out for that raid. Now, I wish to invite a guest to call in. He knows who he is. And let's talk a little bit about, he don't have to talk no more than he wants to, but let's talk a little bit about what happened with his daughter at her school. Okay? If you wish to call in, sir, you go ahead. I'll be watching for your number to appear. End the thing. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Why don't you, I went ahead and talked about the legalities of it. I think you just got in a few minutes ago. I went ahead and talked about the legalities of it and unreasonable searches, and according to what the ACLU says, and they won a $1-point-something million case in South Carolina, that it's supposed to be that if there is a drug raid, that there's supposed to be, well, there's supposed to be a warrant. But go ahead and tell the people what happened, if you want to, with your daughter at the school, and you got the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Well, she's in a class of 30 kids in, I believe it to be a science class, and all of a sudden here comes 4 officers and a police dog and the assistant principal. Everyone's made to stand up, walk outside, and stand against a brick wall. Well, which in turn, all of them are searched, all the kids from the classroom. For what reason, I don't know. I understand that the dog gave a hit on 2 kids' bags that were left in the class. One was one of her friends, which they may take off some of her clothes, you know, to check for drugs. Another one was a boy, and my daughter doesn't really know what happened to him. But you know, yesterday I was so angry, man. You can't imagine how angry I was. I mean, my daughter's like she's innocent. She's an A student. She's respectful to everybody and anyone. And you know, when this kind of stuff goes on, I think that it's just indoctrination, and you know, just to get them ready for what's to come, because you know, half of the kids, I would say 3/4 of the kids in her class, the parents are either imports or you know, have trouble with English in one way or another, and maybe some of them don't care. You know, by what I see driving up there every day, you know, the thump box playing, and then the kid gets in the car. Well, you know you know what the attitude at that house is. You know, when the F word's flying out of the parents' car at 100 dBs, you know, something's wrong there. See, so I would think that half the parents, 3/4 of the parents don't speak English, the rest don't care, and you know, will anyone speak up besides me? I don't know. I'm going to push this to the limit, I can tell you that. I know I can find a pro bono to help me out. You know, and it's all on a principle. I don't give a rat's patoot about any kind of monetary garbage, because you know what I'll do with it? I'll give it right back to the Lord, man. So I'm not looking for it, but I tell you what, there's a principle to be had here, or taught here to someone, and you know, the Lord had me stay home today because He knows what I would have done this morning if I would have went up there with my child. I kept her home. I might keep her home for the rest of the school year. It's only 6 more days.
Right. And she's a straight A student too, huh?
Yeah, straight A student. Yeah, she's never had a problem with it. I mean, you know, she's loved by everybody at the school. You know, and she's just so innocent, man. I mean, I have never met another human being that is just